Let's now get the thoughts of Israeli Ambassador to the Philippines, Ilan Fluss, who joins us now in the studio. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. It is very disheartening and sad that a lot of innocent lives, thousands of innocent lives on the Israeli side, Palestinians, Filipinos, and a lot of other nationalities have been lost in this conflict between the Israelis and Hamas.
It's very difficult, also emotionally, being here, knowing that actually Saturday early morning, the Hamas has launched a war against Israel and slaughtered so many Israelis simply because they are Jewish Israeli civilians, of course with them unfortunately some foreigners. And let me first open and really express my sympathy and condolences also to the families of the two Filipinos who are caregivers of Israeli elderly people, patients, and they stayed with them to the end, and this is something that we appreciate and respect a lot.
But the big question now is, when are we likely to see a negotiated ceasefire between the two sides? Is it likely to happen anytime soon? A lot of Filipinos, close to 30,000 who live in Israel, the relatives here are on edge on the state of their health, their situation. What more can you tell us about negotiations and potential ceasefire?
So, Rico, Saturday morning, Hamas launched a war against Israel. This is a beginning of a war. We declared, of course, that we are in a state of war, and soon you'll see the retaliation of Israel against the Hamas, because unfortunately the Hamas has terror infrastructure and facilities in Gaza, and we cannot allow them to continue and threatening and attacking and killing our people. So it is only the beginning. When are we going to see discussions? It is unfortunately too early to talk about it. But let me say about the Filipinos. You have 30,000 Filipinos in Israel. To the best of my knowledge, and when I talk to Ambassador Lilo in Israel, I understand that the Filipinos are not asking to be repatriated and to come back to Israel. My father-in-law has a Filipina with him in his home, and we speak to her. She feels safe. She knows what to do when there is an attack, a siren, to go into a safe area. Every apartment and house in Israel would have a shelter or a safe room. They know the protocol, they know how to respond, and we know that they want to stay because they are treated exactly as any other Israeli.
So Israel is definitely ensuring the welfare, the safety of civilians, not only of the Israelis, but non-Israelis like Filipinos in Israel.
Well, you know, there's no 100% guarantee we are in a war, and missiles have been shot by the Hamas. However, the same precautions and the same safety mechanisms that are given to Israelis, exactly the same are given to foreigners, including the OFWs. And this came just the other day from the Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs in a question that I posed to him when we met him. And he said, Ambassador Ilan, we are fully committed for the welfare of Filipinos as we are for Israelis.
I spoke a couple of days ago to the Palestinian ambassador to the Philippines, and he said that a lot of innocent Palestinians have been killed in this conflict due to the counterattack, the missile attacks, the ground attacks of the Israeli forces in the Gaza Strip.
So let me put things in place and explain to you the difference. The Hamas is a terror organization. In its charter, it calls for the destruction of the state of Israel, for a jihad and killing Israelis and Jews, meaning there is no political peaceful resolution possible with the Hamas. Now, the Hamas is targeting civilians. That's exactly the definition of a terror organization. The Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, is targeting only Hamas infrastructure. However, the Hamas is using what you call civilian human shield. They are based and they have the infrastructure and the facilities in mosques, in hospitals, in schools, using ambulances as launchers for the missiles, in residential areas, what we are doing, and we inform the people, the Palestinians, we don't have a war against the Palestinian people. And we advise them, keep a distance from Hamas operatives and from Hamas facilities, and you'll not be affected.
But the Palestinians are also complaining, Ambassador, that they have also been oppressed by the Israelis for many, many, many years in the Gaza Strip.
Well, if we want to look back, we have to look really way back to 1948, when the State of Israel was established by a UN resolution with an Arab state next to it. The Arab countries did not respect this resolution, and immediately when we were established, 7 armies have attacked us, and we were able to survive. 1948, the Independence War, 1956, 1967, 1973.
It is a very, very long history.
Exactly. It's a long history, but the history here is the Jewish people, the Israelis, after 2,000 years of persecution, and we remember the Holocaust, and there were other persecutions in Europe, also in Arab countries, we are seeking for respect, to be accepted, to be recognized as an independent state and homeland for the Jews. And obviously, if you talk on the same level, you can create peace and peace discussions.
And these peace discussions have been also ongoing now, Ambassador, for decades, from one US president, UK Prime Minister, Western countries all want peace in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. What can put both sides together, sit down? Does it need a third country, a fourth country, a fifth country to be able to get both sides to the negotiating table and have a ceasefire? So no more Israelis, Palestinians will die in this conflict.
It's a very complicated question, Rico.
It's more complicated than this
we are
question.
in a news program, but let me say, first thing, the Jewish most famous prayer is, may God bring peace upon us, Oseh Shalom b'momav, v'yaseh Shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'moamen. Basically, bring peace upon Israel. It's a prayer for peace, which is every Jewish prayer ends with this prayer. We want peace. Secondly, we do not have to give up. Today, we are in a war. We have to destroy Hamas infrastructure. When this is done, we believe that we have to move, yes, to negotiations and to acceptance. As long as we are being victims of terror, we have to fight terror.
But Ambassador, you're not only being hit on some fronts by Hamas, but also on other fronts by the Hezbollah and the Islamic Jihad. So Israeli military forces have to really defend the borders of Israel.
That's exactly the challenge. We are surrounded by other countries. With Egypt, with Jordan, we have peaceful relations, we have peace agreements. However, in the north, we have Hezbollah controlling southern Lebanon. In the border of Syria, last night, they were firing rockets from there, Islamic Jihad and other militant groups. So we are surrounded by terror organizations supported by Iran, who call for the destruction of the State of Israel. So now we're in a very volatile situation. We would like to contain the situation and to fight the Hamas and not to enter into other fronts. You can see the strong support we're getting from the US and very strong messages to Lebanon. Make sure not to be part of this escalation. There were few incidents in the last few days. Hezbollah did shoot to Israel, the operatives who came into Israel. We had a few incidents. It's still contained. We have to make sure it doesn't erupt into a full-scale war, also in the north, because it will be terrible for everybody.
Before we end this interview, what would you say to the Filipino families who have relatives and friends working in Israel who are currently caught, Ambassador, in this crossfire?
Communications are open. Talk to your loved ones in Israel. Be in touch. If a Filipino feels unsafe and wants to go home, the airport is open. There are still flights, maybe less, but there are still flights. So if you don't feel safe, go back home. To the best of my information, and including, as I said, Edna is working with my father-in-law, they do not want to leave because they are part of us. And we appreciate it, and we'll give you what we can, and we'll be happy also to talk to the families here and to hear from them and to explain to them the situation. This is one of the reasons why we are reaching out with you and in other TV channels.
We're hoping for the best, that this conflict will end sooner rather than later. Israeli Ambassador to the Philippines, Ilan Fluss, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rico. Thank you very much for having me.